Fort Ware at last, the Indian village where they could rejoin the river and the boats, which had been sent round by road and barge, could start to forget the angry moments at Fox Lake too, moments which most expeditions in fact face, but few discuss. But now, stage 3. A 400-mile-long chain of rivers and lakes, lakes and rivers, all climbing slowly to the highest point, Summit Lake. Afloat again, leaving Fort Ware, the expedition glad to have the weight off their shoulders and back onto the boats. Glad to be on the move again, too, after over 2 weeks worrying and waiting at Fox Lake. So cheerfully on downriver, but on once more into trouble. The entrance to Williston Lake, choked by 4 square miles of logjam. Their only hope, a Forest Service tug, or rather a huge barge being pushed by the tug. Helpfully, it offered to act as icebreaker, to plough a path through the jam. Stan quivered.
It sounded a good idea at the time. We thought, well, no trouble at all. So the barge started ploughing its way through, pushing these logs to the side. And as we were going through, the logs were just coming back together again. I must admit, it was pretty scaring at the time, knowing that with the force of these logs coming in again, it could just crush you up.
Once this was all a narrow wooded valley, with a river running through it. Then they built a hydroelectric dam to flood the valley, and sent in lumberjacks to clear the timber. But the dam was finished first, and the valley flooded. Now experts say it will cost millions and take years to clear up the mess. But if the expedition cannot get through the jam, perhaps it can get round, ploughing a path through the flooded forest. But here, new dangers. Captain Fiennes.
The trees behind the tug had been slit by its propellers and were very sharp and moved like springs out of the water behind it. We had to keep well out of the way. Others, which had been broken off completely, shot through the black water like torpedoes, and again would have gone straight through our rubber boats. And we had to be very careful doing a sort of slalom course through the trees.
The British Columbian barge, Forest Engineer, on irresistible rampage through the drowned and dying forests around Lake Williston. And for the expedition following cautiously behind, there is no great temptation to do it a harder way. In fact, after the Sifton Pass, it is nice to have something strong on your side for a change. the logjam rounded, the elephantine charged through the forest over, the open waters of the lake ahead. Williston Lake, up to 9 miles wide, over 150 long, man-made. Its dark waters mined with half-submerged logs, but even so, a sharp lookout and full speed ahead. For lifeboatman Ben, almost like old times in the North Sea. But at the end of every lake, a river. Joe.
Oh, the lakes were really tremendous, beautiful. And the rivers, I'll never stop swearing at them. It was taking us about a full day just to do 15 miles. Because you were dragging the boats up over shallows and getting behind them, pushing them, pulling, and then you'd get 20 yards running deep water where you could start up, and just 20 yards was a blessed relief, like, you know.
The blessed relief of McLeod Lake. A moment of beauty before the next river. The Crooked River, a wandering stream. More hours of wading in ice-cold water, of slithering over slimy stones, of tugging against a racing current, of dealing with beaver dams and leeches. But this is the only way up. Summit Lake at last, the end of the climb. Expressible only in the music of the expedition's current top tune, Bridge Over Troubled Waters.
Scotsman, everyone a Scotsman. Buffalo Bill by Mary Hill, never worked and never will. Aye, man, leave it if you can. There was heel and jocks and dirty socks, Scotsman, everyone.
Between Summit Lake and the River Fraser, an 8-mile portage to be covered exuberantly. For now, all the way home is downhill.
I'm coming back in the good old summertime, when the bagpipes are playing for old Lang Syne. I know she will be waiting to greet me and we'll roam the hills together among the purple heather. Oh, Argyle.
Once the old prospectors and trappers portaged their canoes over this trail, but means of transport have changed. Ran fines.
Rather like not having pack horses, there's no point in putting your boats into Land Rovers, even though it's symbolical carrying only one boat as opposed to all three. It still means that you have covered the whole distance from the Yukon to the United States by boat or portaging your boats around the edge.
The Fraser. The last lap of that whole distance. 700 miles of river and over 100 rapids. Rapids which have claimed the lives of many men. The worst in the first canyon, Bridge River Rapids. Joe.
That was really nasty. I always remember that. We come up over that bank and had a look down into it. I could have died.
This rapid descended in 2 stages. The first, a sharp rock ledge that kicked up the engines. The second, much worse. Jackie.
I thought it was a nightmare. It's like I wasn't conscious looking at the thing. It was right evil looking.
It was scaring. But as soon as I saw it, I thought, what are you doing here? Why go through it?
I thought that it was very unlikely that any rubber boat would get through there without overturning.
But the silver boat's hectic passage had reawakened all young Jackie McConnell's old nightmares. His fear of deep water, his earlier capsize, his feeble doggy paddle. He couldn't go. So a member of the film team took his place in the bows of the second boat. One easy run, one difficult. But if anyone does get hurt on an expedition, whose fault is it? Captain Fiennes.
If someone gets killed, it's not the leader's fault unless the equipment is faulty or the man is doing something which he hasn't been warned about as being dangerous, and the leader should have warned him in advance.
What about a leader's responsibility to his men?
I run it by simply getting every person on the expedition to sign a piece of paper which points out that he realizes there's going to be a lot of dangers and a lot of difficulties and a lot of discomforts, and that he is totally responsible for himself and his belongings and his limbs if anything should go wrong, no matter whether it's his own fault or the leader's fault.
And what do the men owe to their leader?
They owe their leader whatever they've said they will give him in the original contract. No more, no less.
But ethics apart, the recent dangers had done much to reunite the expedition. The Scottish element was furious at being almost outfaced by the English. The soldiers were impressed that the filmmakers could take risks as well as pictures. Then came the decision that the soldiers would not have to stay in Canada for a further 3 weeks on army maneuvers. After nearly 16 weeks in the wilds, they would all be going home together. With the prospect of home and families in sight, even the Fraser's Rapids lost some of their terror. By now, the boats were covering anything up to 100 miles a day, rapids permitting. The end was in sight. For the expedition leader, who had risked most and so stood to gain most, was it now easy to forgive and forget?
At the end of the expedition, very easy to forgive and forget. But in order to bring the expedition alive, you have got to try and remember the times when people were annoyed with each other and why, and be honest about it from everyone's point of view.
And for the expedition members who had only their lives to lose or gain, a moment for thought.
I think there are many occasions where you can forgive, but on this occasion I think it's best just to forget.
But they were none of them out of the canyons yet. Might not the river reassert its old terror? Jackie McConnell.
Once you're inside the rapid, you're enjoying it. You're enjoying getting soaked, you're enjoying the water coming in your face, and sort of going up in there, then banging down inside the wave and not being able to see, and knowing what's happening. It was just a great thing, knowing that you're sort of beating the waves.
Earlier, there had even been talk that if some of the rapids were too bad, Captain Fiennes would go through alone. But all that had changed. Chinaman's Bar, the biggest rapid on the river, with the silver boat soon struggling for sheer survival. But anywhere the English could go, the Scots could go too. Chinaman's Bar, where many others have drowned. And in the midst of the great tumbling waves, Stan Cribbett in sudden danger of his life. The friendly Fraser saved him, sweeping the boat back under the falling man. But still not a river to take second chances on. The end of Chinaman's Bar, easily the largest rapid the expedition encountered. Next, Hell's Gate, the biggest name, but not the biggest test, almost an anticlimax. The only casualty, 500 pounds worth of automatic camera lashed on the end of a pole. The whole expedition safely, easily through the gates of hell. A few more rapids, a few more miles, and they will have completed the first transnavigation of British Columbia. Almost 1,500 miles, 9 weeks. Soon Stan and Jackie will leave the army and emigrate to Canada, and Joe will plan to follow. Ran will go on exploring. Policeman Ben return to his Yorkshire beat. The bridges of Vancouver marking almost the end of a successful expedition?
Definitely, if you set out what you mean to do when you start, if you achieve it without cheating en route, that is successful.
Ben.
I think we all felt at the end of it that we'd achieved something. I think it was worthwhile after all.
Stan.
I just couldn't sort of believe that everything had gone well, reasonably well, and we completed the trip. Oh, it was really worth it.
Jackie.
Well, I was scared of water, and I got off my fear of water now.
Joe.
I did learn a lot. And I think it's made me a better man for the trip, really. But I'd like to do it all again right up to the point where we got to the Fraser. I consider myself lucky enough coming down it once. I think anybody trying it twice is a fool.
And so, in a slight sea mist, over the border.
Cross the border! That's it, Jack! There!